Welcome.
Stupid thing. Okay, let's get it. Oh, man! What the? Yeah! Sweet.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the WiBit.net podcast, recorded live on September 14th, 2011. In this episode, we will talk about some super exciting WiBit news. How close are we to the 1,000 user mark? Is the introduction iOS app really ready to go, or what? In the news, what's the deal with Windows Mobile 8? Jason and Bryan will square off. Apple is considering suspending its lawsuit against Motorola. As promised, we will have an open discussion about Android versus Apple development communities. The projections have changed. The numbers have changed. Could it be that the developers are leading the way? I also just want to say, Blackberry sucks. All this and much, much more coming up on the WiBit.net podcast. For more content, you can find us on iTunes, wibbit.podomatic.com, facebook.com/wibbit, and of course, wibbit.net, WIBIT.net. Welcome to the WiBit.net podcast. Tonight we have the whole crew on. Who we have? We have Gary. What's up, Gary?
Hey, Kevin.
What's going on? Wow, you sound pretty happy to be here tonight. All right, Jason, what's going on?
I was a lot happier when it was just me and you, Kevin.
I kind of feel the same way.
I'm hurt.
I kind of feel the same way.
I'm a grumpy man. What can I say?
Brian, what's up, man?
Not much.
All right, so the whole crew is online. We have a very exciting show for you guys tonight. The first thing, we're going to go over some WiBit news real quick. Jason, we have finally hit 1,000 registered users.
But as of right now, we're at 1,010.
Oh
actually.
my
Nice.
goodness! When did we actually crack it? When did that happen?
That would be sometime this morning, early morning hours, Eastern Standard Time, somewhere between midnight and 7 this morning. On September 14th, we did it.
That's exciting. And you know, one thing that's really cool about that is the rate of our user base growing has been pretty fast, because I think we went live out of beta. What was it? May
16th, I think.
Yes.
That's the press release date, so I'm going off of that.
So we really haven't had that much time, and we have not put any effort in advertising, but you know, you guys have been finding the site, and we are happy that you guys are coming. So thank you, 1,000 WiBit users. Woohoo!
Nice.
Hey.
Awesome.
If you guys haven't noticed, we have posted a preview to the mobile app. Brian, what's going on with that? What's the status?
The mobile app is just pretty much ready for upload. So I think in the next couple days it'll be uploaded and go through its 7-day waiting ordeal. And we should see the introduction app sometime soon. Probably in the next 2 weeks, I'd say.
Awesome. And for
Yeah.
those of you guys that are curious to see what's in store for you, if you just go to the site, I believe Jason put on the feature videos section a YouTube link to a little video that we made that kind of showcases the app and moving through. I mean, it's using the iOS simulator, so you actually see a mouse cursor. Just imagine that's your hand. And then it will kind of, you know, just take your finger on the screen as you watch it and move it along with the mouse cursor. It'll be like you're using the app. It's crazy.
It's definitely better than when you see those app demos on YouTube where people have like a video camera and they're holding the phone and it's just like a big glare. And
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know what you're looking at, man. What are you even?
Is there any more WiBit news, guys, or is that it?
Well, there is the forum change. That was pretty
That's
big.
right.
Oh,
That's
yeah, we
right,
have a
because
winner.
last week we had the Battle of the Forums episode. Jason, who won?
The change won by a larger margin than the rest of the vote. The vote was pretty close overall, but at the end there,
People love hope and change.
Yeah, well, until that change doesn't actually change anything, it's more of the same, and it just has a pretty bow around it, which ironically is pretty much exactly what we did with the forums. We didn't actually change it; we just made it so that the default is the new format, and you, the user, can change it to be whatever you really want it to be.
Nice.
That is changing. It's just the same. It's like change you can believe in. It's just
I think the reason they all voted for it is because we said we need to pass this change right away.
That's right. Don't read it. Don't read it. Just do it. And
do it right away. Yeah.
Don't pay attention to the forum format. Just post to it. Don't worry about answers or anything. Just post and then close. Go move on to another WiBit video or something.
I'm happy about the change. I like it. I think it's awesome.
Well, I'm excited about it as well. And, I guess I'm just a bad WiBit person because I've used it, but I haven't really paid attention to it. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
I think that's a good thing. It's like a special effects artist. I always say the best compliment is when people say, "What special effects?"
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
I added one little extra feature to the forums today where instead of having to go to if you're replying to the whole thread, which now in the new format that's going to be kind of more common than replying to an individual post, you can just reply on the same page. You don't have to, it won't take you to a new page to type in your thing and then a new page to preview it. You can just type it in on the same page and hit save and it should save.
So now in the news, guys, the first news item we're going to talk about, and I guess maybe it's not news, but the Windows Mobile 8 on the tablet platform is kind of being showcased, and there's people that have beta versions of it. There's videos out on YouTube and whatnot. I know that we kind of have our own opinion about what's going on. Jason, let's start with you. What are your thoughts about the new Windows Mobile 8?
Well, I grabbed it from the developer preview already, and I put it on a VM already. Compared to other versions of Windows, it installed really fast, which was nice. I think as a desktop operating system, it's going to follow the Windows standard, which is every other version sucks and every other version is awesome. Windows 8 will be the one that sucks as a desktop operating system. I don't think it's... I hated it as a desktop operating system. But I think it's going to be awesome as a tablet operating system. Because, right now, instead of clicking the start menu like you would and it brings up the normal default kind of start box that's been almost the same since Windows 95, it now takes you to that tablet interface. The start menu is that tablet interface, which is really clunky and not very good. You have to scroll with a scroll bar sideways to see all your applications, and they're all live tiles, and it's just a mess. But as a tablet, I like that interface. I think it's like Windows Phone 7, but not as crunched as Windows Phone 7 is, and you can run all Windows applications on it. So you get a full-loaded Windows on your tablet that has an interface that actually works for a tablet.
That's interesting. So, Brian, I think you kind of have a little bit of an opposite opinion about that.
Right. I think when I saw it, the first thing I thought, and not as a positive as much, is, it's like Windows Mobile Phone 7 but bigger. That kind of sucks. I don't like the tile view very much. I don't feel that it's very fast for your eye to see which program is what. I think because they're all kind of in that pastel color with whites and stuff, it all kind of looks like a bunch of blocks that are not so distinguishable. So it's not very fast to navigate, I find. And the wobbliness and the fonts that are kind of extending and stuff, I don't know. I'm just not a fan. I also, although that is a better structure than the start button, which I completely agree with, having the Windows apps be able to run on a tablet, I don't think is too much of an advantage. I mean, you're going to have the same constraints. The design considerations of a Windows program, a Windows application, is always going to be very different than the design considerations on a tablet. Now, the big question will be will the new .NET framework have, really nice stuff to make interesting tablet-oriented user interfaces? I guess that's the big question that I have. I'm guessing it's going to be no.
You don't think so? Because I know that Microsoft is trying to jump into that space.
But I think it's just too much work. I think they're just going to say, just develop it like you always do,
Maybe.
Do you know if this is an instant on?
Yeah, well, that's funny you bring that up, because I remember a few weeks ago when we were all together, we were talking about Windows 8 with the mounting of an ISO being a feature now.
brand spanking new.
In the same vein, Windows 8 is touting this 4-second boot time like it's something special and new. Well, Linux has been doing that with ext4 for 5 years.
Yeah,
it's true.
So it's booting in 4 seconds, which is awesome, but Linux has been doing that for quite a while.
Which means when it gets loaded up, it'll be more like 10 seconds, and it won't be an instant on.
Yeah, right.
And I really hope that Windows puts I know they try to do this with some modern apps, but the whole app, installing a massive app and having to reboot has really kind of run its course. I know that when you do a lot of that kind of stuff in like Unix and Mac and Linux, you don't really have to do that. So I hope that Windows kind of puts a little bit of an emphasis on that, because that kind of pisses me off, having to reboot after installing software.
That'll kill a tablet. I mean, if you're a tablet and you have to reboot every time an app's installed, I mean, we're now all so accustomed to just installing these apps and running with them on both our phones and our tablets. They couldn't afford that. So
it'll be interesting to see what they actually do with it, because if they're trying to put a PC on a tablet, it's going to be a mistake. I mean, the simplicity of the tablets and the ease of use is really the key to them. Now, I would say that Apple has not done a good job with their Pages, Numbers, their Office suite. They're very limited and almost non-productive. They're hardly of use at all. But so there might be some in-between bridge there for Microsoft. But if they try and get the full system on, I don't know why you need it. Nobody's throwing away their PCs for their tablet. The tablet has a very unique niche, and one that's more used in a stand-up environment, a mobile environment. And they don't want to go overboard with that. If they do, I don't think they're going to be successful with it.
I think that's a really good point, though. If they can crack Office Suite on a tablet and actually get it to work well, because the Office team is pretty badass. As far as groups go in the Microsoft universe, the Office team is just like banging.
Right,
and if they can get it to work on the tablet, that's a quasi game changer, right?
They got to be able to do it with the tactile feel to it, where it's not too cumbersome, and that's going to be the real challenge.
And that can be
the hardware is going to be able to handle it, because they're going into even quad, dual and quad chips in these things. So
it'll be interesting.
I found the most practical reason for a tablet PC. I think it was yesterday when I was, I have a long commute to my office, and I was stuck in some standstill traffic. So I pulled out my iPad and I remoted to work, and I was working while I was stuck in traffic because I was like 3 hours late. So,
that's awesome.
But see, that is the advantage of the tablet, and whatever. So Jason, I know that you were talking earlier. We were having a conversation earlier about the Apple dropping the lawsuit against Motorola.
Well, they haven't dropped it. They're looking to pause it, because they're taking the opinion that they're suing the parent company, and if Motorola is selling Motorola Mobility to Google, then Google's now the parent company. So until that's finalized, they don't want to pursue a lawsuit against a lame duck company, because then they'll just be dumping money into something that they can't win.
Right. And Google have it, so might as well go after them.
Right. So they may sue, which the interesting thing here, I guess, then, is a lot of the HTC lawsuits, they're suing HTC for something that's inherent to Android, not something HTC put on top of Android. I think one of the lawsuits is over the picture slider, where you can swipe at a picture and go to the next one, and that's apparently a copyrighted thing on Apple's side.
Wow.
So if Apple's also mentioned that they may not want to go after Google as a lawsuit because they're not sure if they can win, they're going to have to revisit it all, because it's changed. The opponent's changed, so they have to reevaluate. But it will, if they do continue to pursue against Motorola, soon to be Google Mobility or whatever it's going to be, that'll take the fight. The fight should have always been between Google and Apple, in my opinion, in this. And it should be a fight that kind of argues about what a patent should be in the new age and everything. And that's kind of what the discussion is. But if we have Apple v. Google patent infringement lawsuit go, we'll get an answer to all those questions.
Yeah, but it's that age-old problem. If you can't win it straight on, then you take the flank,
I think that's what Apple's trying to evaluate now is what their strategy needs to be, if it's changed, if the opponent's changed. Because even though Google has a paltry patent portfolio, they're Google, and even though Apple might be a more profitable company, I don't think they have more money or more resources than Google does.
I think they've exceeded
Apple's got
Google.
more cash than the U.S.
I think Google does too, though. I think Google could buy their own country. I remember a news article that was, Google couldn't buy just a small country. Like, they could buy Brazil if they wanted to.
Wouldn't it be funny if they did?
That would be hysterical.
And they just bought Brazil?
That's one of the tax arguments in California for a long time, and it's kind of a fanatical argument. But California is, running out of money, or has run out of money many times over now, and they keep arguing about new ways to tax corporations or people out there. And some of the big companies like Google, well, why wouldn't they just pack up and either buy their own country, build one that floats like they were talking about with the floating data center, or do something where they can just go somewhere else, have no taxes, and make their own laws?
Basically a giant pirate ship.
Yeah.
But what's kind of interesting about this launch with the with 8 is that I was looking at some Gartner research, and it's a September article, so it's just this month that it came out. And they're talking about the launch of Microsoft is not going to happen until 2012, and that the problem with that is that all these Android and Apple new products coming out in the fall are going to be entrenched, and they're really in trouble because they're so late behind the market.
Oh wow, I didn't know it was that late of a release date.
Yeah,
I didn't either. I thought it was no way it was going to be later than like November, December.
I think they put this out here just to try and get people holding on.
It's not going to work on me. I already have an iPad, and I'm going to buy a triple E-pad transformer in the next couple of weeks.
All right, guys. So, an open discussion. I know that in the last podcast, Brian kind of brought up that we were going to have a discussion about the Android versus the Apple community. Now, I know that Brian has been very entrenched in mobile development for some time now, doing professionally doing iOS, Apple iPad development, and also getting involved in Android. So I think that Brian's starting to kind of sense a few different things from the two sides. What are you sensing, Brian?
So it seems like there's kind of two sides of mobile communities. It seems like on one hand you have the Apple user base is very willing to buy applications. If
Between $1 and $10.
Yeah, well, even exceeding that, there's a free app on the App Store. There's a couple of them, like Smurfs is a free application. There's this Monster Pet Store, which is an application. They're free, but they're in-app purchases. Like, people are buying $80 packs of Monster Berries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like the free Smurfs game, from people buying weird little odds and ends to make sure that they can all gangbang the one girl on the farm.
Yeah.
Have skyrocketed the Smurfs app to be basically the most profitable app on the App Store. It's insane. So people with the Apple devices they're spending money, and it was really smart because when you create an iTunes account, to even be able to use half the features of the device, they need your credit card number, but they won't charge you anything. So everything is always just one click away, and it's just a little 99-cent transaction. It's a really smart business model, but they've gotten a lot of money from the user community, and that money has been funneled in through Apple and back into the development of the operating system and into the development of device and hardware improvements, which is really smart. And I think the contrast is that the Google platform is open source, or at least has been up until this coming release, which I guess is going to be your license. But generally speaking, Android is open source. You have a community who doesn't really expect to pay for apps. They want apps to be more on the open source side. And I think there's a lot of Android phones that are being sold for free with a subscription to a phone service. So a lot of moms and pops have Android phones that really don't care to use a lot of the functionality and don't really feel like buying any apps, and giving their phone the credit card number would just be absurd. You know what I mean? So I think you have this weird mix of open source developers on the Androids, and you have people who don't really have too much of an interest in buying apps on their devices. And on top of that, you have stuff like the Amazon store, which is kind of beating out, arguably, I guess maybe not, is at least infringing on the Google App Store. And so now the profit, skimming off the top, is going to Amazon instead of Google. So Google's not getting those revenue streams to reinvest in the operating system. So it seems like it's kind of collapsing in on itself, but maybe I'm just kind of failing to understand some of the ways. I know that Angry Birds, for example, is free on an Android, but there's advertisements in the game. So I don't, it is Google. I don't know how profitable their ads are, and how that compares with Apple's, but
it's funny
the mentality is very different between the user communities, it seems.
Well, it's funny you bring up Angry Birds, because Angry Birds, it brings up a good point with what's wrong with the Android business model, I guess. There's the Amazon App Store. That's a huge problem to paid apps in Android. And it's because, there's a paid version of Angry Birds, but you can only get it in the Amazon App Store.
Interesting, huh?
There's an Amazon App Store, and then there's the Android market. The Amazon App Store offers a different app that's normally paid for. They offer a different app every day for free, which, if I'm an Android user and I want an app that costs money, I wait long enough, it's going to be for free in the Amazon App Store, and I'm just going to get it there. It kind of sucks for Android developers that Amazon's taken this route, because they devalued every app, and by default, since Google's taken the path of, we're offering you this operating system, do what you want, it would be contradictory for them to go to Amazon and say, knock this off, you're ruining our marketplace. Right. But they are. Amazon's App Store is the worst thing to happen to Android ever, and there's nothing Google can do about that.
And you can independently install applications too, so you don't even have to use an app store. You can just go grab the apps and install them. If you go on torrent You could just grab the apps and install them.
And you don't
on
need
the Apple device, you have to jailbreak them.
Now, I wonder how all this has to do with the numbers that are coming out with the projections for the future projections for tablet PCs has gone up. I think Gary, you were talking about this earlier, that the expectations have gone up and above 60 million units, and that's gone up from a 50-some million units just recently, earlier this year.
That's right.
And we've seen an increase statistically of the iOS devices, where Apple is almost hitting about 70% of the worldwide market, and Android dropped relatively significantly statistically in the second quarter this past year. The numbers that I'm reading here on Google News is Android-based devices dropped to 26% of the overall market, down from 34% the previous quarter. So
wow.
do you think that this massive drop in those devices has anything to do with the development community itself?
I think that it's just like the game systems, console game systems. The hardware doesn't matter. The cost doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is good titles coming out often enough.
You are damn right about that. Right.
And Apple has the titles. They just do. I mean,
2015, they're projecting 320 million tablets.
Wow.
So that's crazy.
But Brian's making a key point, because that's one of the things that keeps coming up, is that the apps are they're either games that are repeating, they're the same games, but other people are just, putting them out there, rather than real substantial applications that people can benefit from. But that's a strong point, Brian.
But I think the thing is, from what I can tell, it seems like a lot of businesses are releasing, and I especially see this in banks. A lot of banks release an iOS app, and then sometimes later, some of them release an Android app too.
Right, yeah, that's true.
So I know that does happen.
And I know some of the smaller vendors that I do work with at my day job are coming out with iOS or iPhone apps without a whisper about Android apps. So they're definitely going to the Apple devices first to hit the market.
Well, you guys got to be a little bit fair there. The demographics are completely different from what an Apple user is and what an Android user is.
But why is that demographic different? I guess it's part of it.
Well, first of all, Android phones can be a lot cheaper, and Android tablets are going to have to be a lot cheaper to be successful. Apple tends to be a high-end market, so of course a bank is going to appeal to people with money. And a lot of the in-app purchases and stuff, it's something that you expect from the platform now that Android didn't have that to start with. Android's approach things a little bit differently. Being an open source platform as it has been, from a business perspective, and unfortunately an American perspective, it's foolish business because Americans don't treat open source the way it should be, generally speaking. And, now that they're going licensed, which may help with some of that because they might lock a few more things down and get a little bit more professional. But, you can go out and get a brand new Android device for free on some carriers now, because you're getting a very low-end device, and it's not very powerful, and it's got like Android 1.6 on it or whatever it is. You're not getting people that have money necessarily all the time. Sure, I have an HTC Thunderbolt, and it's just as expensive as an iPhone, but it's still not geared that way, I guess. It's still geared towards more communal and less, individual. I don't know.
But because of that, if I make a racing game, and that person with the free phone does decide to fork up the $5.99 that I'm charging for my racing game, and they get it on their free phone, it's going to run like crap.
That's true.
And they're going to be frustrated and disenchanted and probably not want to buy another app again.
That's very true. But I think, in my opinion, a mobile operating system, a smartphone mobile operating system that has the quality of Android needs to exist in low-end phones. I think the world's a better place if we're all better connected. Unfortunately, I don't think Americans see it that way. I think Americans see it as it's free, gimme, 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 gimme. I think a lot of other cultures kind of take it as what I said, where it's free, but there's a community here, and get involved in whatever, and pay for things when you can, and make smart choices. Where we're sitting here on these shores, it seems just like foolish business.
I think we actually have a little bit of confusion in the debate because Android's, being both on phones and on tablets, a lot of the penetration is advantages in the tablet market. And, we're kind of going back and forth between the phones and the tablets. I was thinking leaning more along the tablet line, and obviously the Android started in the has been heavy in the phone lines.
Oh, well, in the tablet line, I think Android has a long way to go to be competitive with the iPhone or the iPad.
The only thing that really matters is that RIM sucks and Blackberry sucks, and
Nice.
they're hovering under 5% of market share right now, and they should stay down there. So
Who wants a 7-inch tablet that can't check your email? Unless you
guys.
have a stupid BlackBerry that can't do anything but check email.
Well, guys, that concludes the end of the WiBit.net podcast. Does anyone have any last words? Okay.
See ya.
On that note, we're out of here. Bye.
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 Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you for supporting WiBit.net. For more content, please check us out on iTunes, wibbit.podomatic.com, facebook.com/wibbit, and wibbit.net, WIBIT.net.